record on this computer. Okay. All right. This is a little tiny session of solution for the sprint challenge. How it could be approached, how I approached it, and then any other tips and tricks, as this is my potentially final teaching moment with all of you, just because I'll be going back to HTML and CSS for the new cohorts. I might see you in capstones, but who knows? Who knows where we'll all end up? You're all progressing so nicely. Okay, so you were given a problem. In addition to that problem, you were given instruction to do certain things. And I wanted to talk about a couple of the gotchas. One of the gotchas was, and this is on purpose, I wanted you to think, so I'm sorry, but right here, solution. Convert all font size values from PX to rem. Make sure that all of the rem values are based on a 10 pixel base. So I purposely did not put an HTML root element, as we could call it, because I wanted you to remember, and from your notes or lesson, whatever it took for you to remember that from our lectures, go find the font size 62.5% and put it in. So remember, the font size here was 20px, right? So on a base of 10, 20 divided by 10 is 2. And so 20px would have converted into 2 rem. All right, so then you were supposed to go find anything with an explicit font size pixel, which was only like 2 things. It was just an exercise to help jog the old brain on what this meant and why rems are used. Now, if I had all the time in the world and I could teach this course for 12 weeks, like we would have a whole week on typography, how to approach it, best practices. We just don't. We got to get you accelerated into JavaScript and then into computer science. And so obviously I've made a living off of user interfaces, and you can too, but not as easy anymore, because you got to know a little bit of React, you got to know a little bit of something on the JavaScript side. So that's just a little side note there. So that's the font size solution enabled right there. You'll notice that I gave you 2 mix-ins. This mix-in was a centering content mix-in. I think this one was pretty straightforward. Just copy and paste center content in to the right spots, and magically it'll work. One thing that maybe some of you might have struggled with is in boxes. Maybe you did something like this where you went into each box. So you could have done box 1, right? So here's box 1, and then box 2. And this is a valid solution, but remember, you don't want to repeat yourself if you can help it, because you want to keep everything in one spot so you could update it later. And so that's where center content inside of the boxes class would have been a better solution than putting them individually into each one, but both are valid as far as the end user is concerned. And for the sprint challenge, it would have been valid. But a better way would be to put it in the parent class. So that's an interesting one I wanted you to think about. Remember, I told you to make the logo an oval. And so that trick was definitely from one of the lectures when we talked about using percents inside of border radiuses. And so that could have been a little bit hard if you didn't watch that or remember that, but 50% is the trick inside of the border radius mix-in. And of course, the mix-in's not doing much for us besides the web prefixes, which we know are a big deal across browser. But as far as functionality, it's not much different than actually saying border dash radius. So those were the 2 mix-ins you were supposed to use. The container, so you might have noticed that I took the time to percent base layout everything here, but remember, the point was not to frustrate you. It was to enable you to use the skills that you've learned. I wanted you to come out of here going, yeah, I could do this stuff. And so that's what the whole point of this sprint challenge was, to kind of test your knowledge in code. And one of those tests was to change the container. So the container came pre-built with a width of 900 and no 100%, right? It was just static. And so the scroll bar would pop in, right? So that horrible scroll bar, horizontal scroll bar, your job was to remove that by introducing the 100 and, of course, the max width. In combination with those two, you now have a nice 100% fluid layout. Pretty sweet. I asked you to nest every less selector appropriately. You could have gone so far as to nest everything inside of container, right? Like that would have been valid. A better solution is to avoid nesting as much as possible for fear of over nesting in this one page website example. But when you're like building components in React, then this will actually look, this whole web page could be just one component of style. So this is really important to understand nesting on a simple level here, because it really will impact you. And my challenge to you, my ultimate sprint challenge, super stretch, is to continue to use less throughout the time you have here at Lambda, because it's going to help you understand these principles even more. And the quadruple stretch goal is to use Flexbox throughout the rest of Lambda. Flexbox is a tough one, I know, but that last link, I think it was pinned, was super good. I love that reference. So go look at that if you haven't seen it. It's in pinned. Okay, going through the rest of the solution. Let me look at the notes of what's, oh yeah, turn every background to black. So hopefully you did not do something like this where you went in and just said Command F and black. That would have defeated the purpose. That's why I said using one variable. And so this is very common, by the way, to see like a primary color variable. And then it's obviously, where'd my variables go? There it is. So the goal there was that it started in gray, and then you were able to come in and turn it black. Okay, we talked about nesting selectors. We talked about mix-ins. We talked about making the whole site responsive, using the escaped media queries. So obviously, I gave you the example here on how that would work. Then after you had it working, you were to apply it to nav, box 1, box 4, color of green at laptop. So if we were to go down, that's what the solutions should look like on the UI side or on the visible side. On the code side, we would have gone into nav and we would have introduced a media laptop background green. That's how I would have done it. Remember that I was very explicit here. I wanted you to use escaping, but you could totally do this, right? You could say at media, max width. Sorry, I can't type with a mic in front of my keyboard, et cetera, et cetera. You could have just done that. And that would not have been valid, though, because you were supposed to use the escaped variable. So that's an important one to understand, the difference between this escape variable. Now, some of you might ask, why is this even important? Well, my retort would be, this is way more intuitive to me over a long span of a project working with other developers than potentially somebody writing a million different max widths with maybe pixels that are different. So this is more for kind of enterprise level stuff, but you can use it on even a single page website. So let me just show you all the colors that went down. So this is what it would look like on laptop. On tablet, this is what should have happened. These colors should have changed. And then on phone, they go orange on the ones that should change. So this was not meant to be difficult in the way of like just hard things to do, like just for making it difficult. I hate that. I wanted to test your knowledge. I wanted to see, could you do these things pretty quickly? And that was the whole goal of this project. Now, the stretch goals were just to push you a little bit further into the uncomfortable flex box zone and box model zone. So like on tablet and phone, I updated the verbiage because it was a little confusing to say increase the boxes to 100% width. Hint, make sure, and then I was going to talk about the footer doesn't bleed up into the content. So what does that look like? Well, let's go look at the boxes, and I'll show you what that looks like. And don't worry, I'm going to address, I can see Slack popping up, but I'm just focusing on this, and I'll come back to it if you have any questions. So don't worry about that. Okay. So obviously we have our 45% on our boxes. We can simply change that to 100% to achieve this goal. But if you did it, you'll notice that footer popped up. And so this was not by accident, right? This was part of the challenge that you're going, okay, because as I'm building it, I'm going, oh, this is actually a good hard thing they got to think about. And the hard thing they got to think about is, remember how you had a height of 200 px per box? Well, now that you've made it 100%, it's 200, 200, 200, 200, right? And so now we have to think about, oh man, we have to increase the container's height to account for those. So right now we're only covering about 2 boxes in our container's height right here with 420. So we could look at like 820. Go look down, our footer's still not there. We could go 920. Like at that point, it's just up to you to say, like, what do you want to see? What, 920 could look good, 910, even 900. There wasn't a correct answer there. I just wanted to make sure that you understood the footer needs to get out of the boxes. But of course, that would not fly if you did that on desktop, right? Because if you change a value in the original parent selector, you're going to jack up everything. So what we needed to do to get that correct is to say at tablet. So you would go borrow a media query. So bring that in, and I would say at tablet, and then I would adjust my height to be 900 at tablet. Then of course, this would go back to the 420 it was. So that when you're on desktop, it'll go back to the height that we need it to be. So let's see. On tablet, whoops. I guess I tried to save, and that kind of freaked everything out. Shouldn't I hit this? It's a good bad habit to have, is to keep trying to hit save. Oh, where am I? Content, width 100%. Okay, so the same thing would be applicable to width, right? Because before, so if we go back, oh my goodness, why did I messed up my keys here? Sorry. If we go back and we had, what was it like? Oh, I think it was like 42% or something. I can't remember. Let me go look at my codes. Oh, 45%. Let me just get everything back in there. And then 100 and this guy was 420, yeah, and then this was 100. Sorry, I got lost in my thoughts there. So what we'd have to do is introduce a media query here and a media query here with the updated pieces to make it work. So that's how that stretch goal would have worked. Man, my indentation is just not working. I'm sorry. So yeah, we would say width 100% right here on our tablet. So let's go down to tablet. And then our height would be 900 pixels. So there we go. Now it's working how we wanted to. And also we didn't bust it over here. So that's how you would accomplish that goal, that original stretch goal. Let me go down the line of stretch goals, make sure I decrease the navigation box to half of its current height on phone and make it full width and make the logo move to the top. So that was just a flex box exercise. This stuff's like, I just want to push you a little bit, make you a little bit uncomfortable with some of the things you should know, quote unquote, should know. The stretch, let me talk about the super stretch goal. So this one was it's kind of a doozy of just understanding mentally what you need to do. So the first step would have been to just study this for a second. So I told you have to use min width. So you would change these to min width. And then the stretch goal is to then, with these at min width, follow all the color rules accordingly. So make it look exactly the same as if you had the max width on. And so really you have to go, oh wait, remember when we talked about min width? It's mobile first. Mobile first. So then you have to remember that when you're mobile first, these styles, like these styles, are actually what the default value is on mobile. That is the mind destruction, and is that when you adjust your media queries, you're literally swapping what the default values look like. So the default values look like this and on up. And so to accomplish your goal, you need to look at what your phone looks like first, and then as you get each breakpoint, it has to match the other way around. So this is really interesting. That's why I don't want to solve it for you. If some of you, I noticed that not a lot of you solved this one. So this is the first step to solving it right here, changing things to mid-width. The next step would be to get your mind to understand that min-width starts with phones and or smaller sizes, right? So that means anything before 400px needs to probably match the colors that were introduced into the first set of the first problem, like the base problem. So your colors need to look like orange and purple from phone first, and then you can introduce more colors with the media queries. That is how you solve that problem. So start with phone in mind, and then move your way up to desktop. That's the trick on how to solve that problem. Okay, so that is the solution. I can go over the questions. If you had to teach someone with basic CSS knowledge what a preprocessor was, how would you describe it? Hopefully you talked about how there was a specific syntax like less, which then gets converted by a compiler or preprocessor called, in our case, in JavaScript, and then it outputs to normal CSS. That would be a valid explanation. Number two, what is the command node in Node Package Manager, NPM, to install less globally? This was like the hottest item throughout the week of confusion among everybody. Well, not everybody, but just a lot of us. The answer would be npm install -g for global and then less. Of course, if you put sudo or sudo, whatever you want to call it, that's also valid because you might have had to do that if your permissions needed it. And what is the difference? Please provide a mixin. So I wanted you to go find a mixin that you had worked with and just paste it in and prove that you understood what that was. Number four, what is the difference between fixed, adaptive, and fluid? Fixed is literally fixed widths. So width is a hard-coded pixel. Adaptive introduces media queries that we then change the content of our CSS to adapt to the media queries. And then fluid is a combination of media queries plus %base layout. So that's the answer to that. Number five, why do we need to use the CSS property max width in a responsive website? And the answer would be because we need to constrain our design. And any way you said that, would be acceptable. So those are the questions. Okay, I think I've covered pretty much everything except for the second half of the stretch goals and the super stretch, because I want you to do those on your own. I'm now going to go look at the Slack chat. Let's see here. Wow, there's a lot of chats. Okay, let me start from the top. Let's see. Dope poster. Which one was that? Oh, it's probably Star Wars one. Okay. Aaron said, I was a rule breaker and I went into the reset and changed the 100% into 62.5. That is not rule breaking. That is just great. So you did just fine. You understood the principle there. So you did great. That's valid. Let's see. Aaron, you said I put center content with parentheses. It still worked. That's because of the syntax of mix-ins. If you don't pass a value, it automatically assumes no value is being passed. But you can pass, right, with parametric mix-ins. So you can pass parameters. So that's a valid way to write it, because you're not passing anything, but at least now you know. Super duper, ultra, mega, ultra stretch goal. John, if you really want that, I would say go to your favorite website right now and go code the interface, like blocks of it, not the content, but go code the interface of it and see if you can get that, if you can do that. If you can do that, I mean, that's awesome. So that's your super, ultra, mega, ultra stretch goal. Color variables, the secret to making beamable sites. Yes, Daniel, if you wanted to become a WordPress developer and just make a million themes and be successful, variables would be great. Perry, painted black. That's a good one. It's a really good one. Anthony Ellis, for some reason I could not get the boxes green. Navigation was fine, as was the footer on those media ones, but I couldn't get the boxes to change. I'm assuming you're talking about color. And so you would have had to come in here and introduce a background color with a media query. That's how you get them to change. That's the secret. So at media at laptop background green inside of a class called box1. Of course, this is nested inside of content. So if I minimize that, you can see that. So that's how I did that. Go check your code, Anthony, on that one. If it still doesn't work, reach out to a TA. But that's how I did it with the media query right there. Any reason not to use height 100% to fix the footer problem? Yeah, there could be many reasons. One of them would be like there's more content below it, like if this was somebody else's website. But height 100% is not always viable, because you have to have the cascade of height from the body tag down to the HTML tags. You can actually have issues with it. So height 100% really only works when you have explicit heights. For example, nav, right? Like, let's go up here and look at a good example. So height 100% works really good here because we have a set height above it. So that is why height 100% works really well here. When we start getting into different Flexbox challenges, not when, but like when you do, like in real life, or floats or tables, sometimes the height has issues. And so you have to make sure you're super explicit. It's almost like the position relative absolute child example we talked about yesterday. So just be aware. That's why. Yeah, Aaron, I just changed the flex flow to column. Yeah, that totally works too. Well done. It seems easier to build from mobile first and then up from there. If you're given a design, yes. If you have a design from the beginning. But I would say 9 times out of 10 over thousands and thousands of websites that I've built, I would tell you 90% of them were given desktop first. They never gave me a mobile design. There was a rare breed, 10%, that would say, oh, here's your mobile design, get started. So Daniel, I know it. I know it because mobile, it's just easier to code that way. But unfortunately, that's not usually how it goes. Unless you get to a really good company that does that. I mean, I think really good companies do desktop too. Like, I shouldn't say that. It's really designer opinion. Okay, I didn't change the variable names, but it seems to me that the name should be at tablet, min width, at laptop, large screen. That's you. You can do whatever you want. I don't disagree. It's just something that helps us see these things. You can do whatever you want, but I like to say tablet and phone and laptop because those are more realistic to what people usually call those points in the break. Because if you do large screen, it's like, well, what is large screen? You know, you could forget what that is. Versus laptop, you always know that you're thinking about a laptop user. So it's kind of like a user in mind. That's why. But totally, we could call it monkey and banana and be fine. Dixie, I put my min width variable in, but it's not changing the interface. So you have to make sure you do both. Min width variable. So if it's the super stretch goal, again, I'm not going to address it. You got to figure it out yourself. But this is the beginning. I'm going to tell you now. You've got to use your media queries. Go look at your media queries again, Dixie. That's secret number 2. Okay. A next question: why not just include a CDN instead of npm or any installer? Well, I'm using CodePen, so I am using a CDN. But for your projects, the reason you would not want to use a CDN is because I have actually experienced many times where the content distribution network, CDN, that I was using went down. And so I've been in the middle of a project and we lost Google Fonts because we didn't install it locally. Or we lost Font Awesome or something. Because technology breaks, it just does. So the best way to always prevent these things from happening is to have your own server contain everything on it. So that's the answer to that. And by the way, I don't know if I'm saying your name. Is it Allah Ayad? I want to make sure I say that right, so I don't want to goof your name. Apologize for that if I did. I think that's a really good question, though. Shavana, I used display block to change boxes width. Not sure how it worked. So when you display something block, it tries to take up all the width left and right of it. So that's probably why it worked. Because when you display block, it tries to take up everything around it. Amanda Phillips, I used a media query and did 100% height in that for tablet and down in it for the content. Yeah. If you can use height 100%, but again, on bigger projects, multiple elements inside them, I've just seen so many issues with it. So if it works for you, it works. That's awesome. I love percent compared to hard-coded pixel 10 times out of 10. I'm always trying to go percent. So, but remember that thing I talked to you about with height 100%, where if you adjust your viewport, then your height changes. If you have everything height 100%. So as long as you have a parent that has a set pixel, then you're going to be just fine. So Ayla, 3 A's. When I see 3 A's, I go, Ayla. You can pipe up in here and tell me. I don't want to keep butchering your name. Let's see. Troy, I changed height to auto in the app media. That's pretty much the same thing as height 100%. So auto will just go to what's inside of it, whereas height 100% will try to fill up also what's inside of it. They're both valid, but okay, awesome, Dixie. That makes me happy that you got it. Okay. I think you're well equipped as to the why You can call me all the way you say it right. Okay. Yeah, man, I'm like sad. I feel like I'm going to lose my friends to another instructor, but it was really fun. Thank you for bearing with me on my first go teaching. I'm sure I'm going to look back at some of these videos and laugh at myself and some of my curriculum, but man, it was fun. So if you ever want any Josh wisdom, just chat me. If you're ever nervous about like an interview or something and you need some front end help or some professional advice, just reach out to me and I'd love to give you whatever I can. I want you all to succeed. I truly mean that, because remember my little speech about we all live across the country and we're not going to take each other's jobs? Well, that is totally true. So I want all of you to get jobs. Like, this isn't a competition. We need to make sure that we are filling up the jobs in our regions so that we can get nice jobs, support our families, and just give back to the community. So I really feel holistically that that's the goal of Lambda. That's why I came here. I want people like all of you to get jobs and be happy. So it's really a cool job. All right. Anyway, waxing very poetic. Okay, last questions. You got 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Any question? Allah, you got a question? Thanks, guys. I really appreciate all the great stuff. Aaron. Aaron, you always pop a question when I don't see it, dude. You gotta stop doing that. Okay. I mean, if you're doing a mobile first design, you don't need to call the min-width 400p exit phone because your default is phone and your design is tablet, right? You answered your own question with the snarky little tag. I'm going to miss you the most, Aaron. So if you're doing a mobile first design, you need to call the min-width 400px at phone because your default is phone and min-width 400px. So yeah, the default is before 400. Okay, so I talked about that briefly, but your default styles will now work up to 400. But if you don't set anything, if you don't put a media query around it, you're right, it'll just keep growing. So that's why with everything min width, everything still looks good up here because our default styles are that. But I'm just talking about colors. Remember, I didn't ask you to change like width or height for the super stretch. It's just the colors. So if you want this, if this was a viable, or if this was a correct solution, then these would all be black above 1100, right? So you got to figure that out. Phablet. Thanks, John. Put Aaron in his place. No, it's been so fun. Okay, I'm confused as to how to add less to a React project that will eventually have like 15 components. You know what, Troy? It's time to Google, my friend. You got to learn. Go look at React app and installing less. That'll be a great place to start. Okay, have a great weekend. I really do hope you have a great weekend. Take a break. Realize how good you are. You don't suck as much as you think you do. I always think I suck, and then I can do amazing things. And so I look at your stuff that you've done. You've done some amazing things. All right, have a good weekend. See ya.